A few weeks ago, we discussed my disagreement with one publication and where they ranked Ryan Day among elite college football coaches. Well, today, Bill Bender from Sporting News is with us, and him and I are in agreement about where Ryan Day falls in this conversation.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes, part of Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Monday, June 13th in the year 2022, and today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. I would also like to thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. On today's episode, Bill Bender from the Sporting News is back with us to discuss the ranking of the elite college football coaches. Well, not just the elite college football coaches, every college football coach, and we dabble in some other hot topics in the sport. I love having Bill Bender on. He is full of information. He's full of knowledge, and him and I just vibe on the show very well, going back and forth, discussing different things. Going into this conversation, I was not anticipating NIL or transfer portal to be a topic that we would talk about for a lengthy period of time. However, once it came up, we didn't go away from it. We just let things flow like we should. Bill Bender's here. I'm going to back away. I'm going to bring in Bill Bender to the show because, guys, this show was a lot of fun, and you will see Bill and I agree as far as where Ryan Day ranks among the elite college football coaches in the sport. It's list season, and we have had a couple publications rank college football coaches. We talked about one a few weeks ago, but today, whenever Sporting News does their coach rankings, I love to have Bill Bender from Sporting News come on to discuss their ranking, their breakdown, and just different details that go into their list. Bill Bender from Sporting News is back to discuss Sporting News ranking of college football coaches. Bill, welcome back to the show.
Hey, AJ, thanks for having me on. How are you?
Doing well, doing very well, getting ready for an extremely hot week. I believe it's going to be upper 90s, maybe 100 degrees one day. So I'm anticipating a lot of heat and a lot of water intake as well.
Yeah, it's supposed to be in the high 90s here in Ohio as well. So, we're bracing for that, hoping for some cool off a little bit. But like you said, we're in the heat of list season, forgive the pun. And, our coach rankings definitely are part of that as we get an inch closer to media days.
You're exactly right. In this list, and Ryan Day is on a streak. Even though he had a couple losses last year, he is still one of the more respected and really good coaches in the sport. Last year, Sporting News had Ryan Day ranked as the number 6 coach in the country. This year, he is number 4. The top 5, I'll go 5 through 1. Luke Fickle, number 5. Ryan Day, number 4. Kirby Smart, number 3. Dabo Swinney, number 2. Nick Saban, number 1. First thing, Bill, will go with, why did Ryan Day move up a couple spots this year, coming off of a season that he had 2 losses?
Some other guys moved over. Lincoln Riley moved from Oklahoma to USC. Brian Kelly went to LSU from Notre Dame. Through 3 years, Ryan Day checks a lot of boxes. I think most people would consider him the coach without a national title most likely to win one next, based on the program he's built at Ohio State. I know for Ohio State fans, it wasn't the best year in the world, given the losses to Oregon and, of course, Michigan. But when you're talking about a coach who in 3 years has lost one league game, has been to a national championship game, and has a team back that appears ready to make that next possible national championship run, I like his spot there. And honestly, we didn't get a lot of pushback about where we have him.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't push back there at all. I do believe you look at Saban, Swinney, and Kirby Smart, they've kind of solidified as 3 of the better coaches in the sport. And Ryan Day, to some, could be already in that group. is knocking on the door to join that exclusive group of the top 3. So I don't really see anything wrong with that. I would personally have him right there. At 5 is Luke Fickle, and that's interesting to me because last year Luke Fickle was 13, but he quickly climbs up as he keeps building a monster or a good machine there in Cincinnati. They make the playoff this year. They have some really good, solid wins throughout the season. Luke Fickle right there at 5, another guy that used to coach at Ohio State, is someone that Ryan Day and Luke Fickle could be battling for a playoff spot in this upcoming year, even down the road.
Yeah, and I think Luke Fickle, people might have a problem with that, but I mean, when you take into consideration that he took the first group of 5 team to the playoff, that he sent 9 guys to the NFL in one single draft from Cincinnati, that he's built that program through the recruiting and has elevated their stock enough that I don't think there's going to be a huge drop-off when they go to the Big 12. Now, what the Big 12 looks like is obviously going to be a little bit different, maybe not the Big 10 or the SEC, but there's no question in my mind right now Luke Fickle's a top 5 coach, and even if they take a little baby step back next year, he'd still probably be a top 10 coach.
Yeah, I do think he would be, because if you look at 10 through 6, let's go through those quickly. 10's Kyle Whittingham has been a long time coach at Utah. Number 9, Jim Harbaugh. And that one's tricky to me because I never know what to expect from a Harbaugh coach team. I know he's a good coach, but we have seen them do very well. We have seen them flop at times. Number 8 is Jimbo Fisher, 7 Lincoln Riley, 6 Brian Kelly. So I could see Luke Fickle staying at 5 or maybe slipping a little bit because those guys right behind him, they're doing good things at their schools as well. Of course, Jimbo has not won more than 8. Excuse me. I think he had I almost said no more than 8 wins at one year, but I think they did it pretty good in 2020. But Harbaugh's there, and Lincoln Riley, that's the name I'm looking for at USC. I don't know what to expect out there. I don't know if it's going to be Oklahoma, where he instantly got there and they quickly had success, or if it's going to take a few years for the train in USC to get rolling.
Yeah, I mean, starting with Harbaugh, I think the top 9 coaches in our list all have made the college football playoff. And I like that. I think so. In that regard, you can't say somebody behind them has done something they haven't. And when one of the pushbacks you get with this list is always this coach hasn't done anything. But if you read social media, according to that, I think nobody has done anything except maybe Saban. So if we're going on that standard, that is what it is. Whittingham's good. I like him in the top 10. And then Lincoln Riley, I mean, yeah, this is going to be the coach that we all watched this year. The way that he bolted from Oklahoma, the way that he used the transfer portal in a good way. I'm saying used as in, yeah, it's not a bad thing when you get Caleb Williams,
Right.
the Biletnikoff winner Jordan Addison, and Oregon's leading rusher Travis Dial on the same roster. So they're going to be flashy. They're going to be exciting. But I still think it'll take a recruiting cycle or 2 before USC is a serious challenger for not the playoff, but I mean, you can get to the playoff like you did at Oklahoma, but can you actually win a national championship once you get there?
And that's one thing that I think gets lost in Lincoln Riley's time at Oklahoma was playoff berths and having Heisman Trophy winners. Those are things that I kind of expected at times because he had that train rolling. I don't know how many consecutive Big 12 championships he won, but I think it was a series of 4. I know it was at least 3. I think it was 4 in a row where he won. He knows how to get a thing going and keep and sustaining it. I don't know how quickly he'll be able to get it going in USC. I know because the program has not been what it used to be. They want it to be what it used to be. It just takes time. With things changing in college football and the portal being what it is, you may think you have a guy for a couple of years, and he's like, no, sorry, things were good in year 1. I'm going to go somewhere else after this season because somewhere else the grass might be greener on the other side.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, with NIL and the transfer portal, I think they've combined to create a mess. And maybe you can combine them to curb some of that. I mean, one possible solution is, an athlete can't get NIL their freshman year. That way you avoid having it be a recruiting tool. The other one is if a player transfers, maybe NIL you keep the same. Okay, you can get NIL whenever you want, but if you transfer, you've got to sit a year now. And that would alleviate the free agency and tampering and all that kind of thing. And you would think, in theory, with NIL and those kind of things, players would be more apt to stay at a school, but it still comes down to playing time. And my biggest, I don't have an issue with NIL at all. I don't. Athletes getting benefits is amazing, but the one thing I would say about it is you want those athletes, and here's my biggest issue right now is honestly, it's when a player commits to a school without setting foot on the campus. I think that's a problem. Like, if Ohio State's getting a recruit and he hasn't stepped foot on campus, you can't act surprised when he transfers. There are so many.
Right.
Would you go to a college that you haven't stepped foot on? Would
No,
you
not
send
at
your
all.
kids to that? I wouldn't. And I mean, that's the only one that I look at that I'm like, that's a little bit weird when that happens.
No, it is weird. And I don't know what the conversations are behind closed doors where people are discussing the things that you just mentioned, but I'm sure that has been a talking point for quite a while, and people are trying to figure out the proper way to handle the portal. I personally, Bill, have no problem saying you have to sit out 1 year upon transferring. I didn't have a problem with the rule prior to it being taken away, and you could say you can immediately transfer. I had no problem with them putting that 1 year sitting out back into the sport, because I didn't think it was a problem with it. I think there was a push to not have that thing there. But I personally didn't see a problem with the rule being in place, because as I was told it was for academic purposes to make sure kids stayed on track to graduate, and if credits didn't transfer, you're not falling way behind. If that's the reason, I don't know for sure, but if that's the reason, I have no problem with the 1 year sitting out. I still don't, even if it's not, I still don't see a problem having a kid sit out for 1 year if he wants to transfer. Just it worked for years. The sport was fine. Didn't have all this chaos that all of a sudden, as soon as you take that 1 year away, everything goes crazy. So if they put that rule back in, I would have no problem with it.
Well, and that's the thing is, like, a lot of these rules, the intention, remember, and you and I both remember the outcry for players shouldn't have to sit out a year. That was before NIL.
Right.
I mean, before NIL, it was fine. Yeah, go play and not sit, and then you saw the numbers go up. And then again, I think the intention of the rule, that's not what it was. And I think that's one of the biggest points Nick Saban has made about NIL that's made sense is the intention isn't what the execution is. The intention is, and we see with Ohio State athletes, for example, is CJ Stroud being on a Riker commercial or getting leased a Bentley. I hope I didn't mess up the dealerships because I see all these commercials, but you get what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
if he does a commercial and is able to lease a car or whatever, that's fine. It's not creating collectives with essentially slush funds that are, in my opinion, it's like an NFL salary. And that's why Ryan Day's comments last week were so profound, because he was the first coach to put a number on it, right? And it was almost like a call to those, Ohio State boosters and businessmen. This is what we need. And if that's what the game is becoming, I think, we know that stuff went on in the past, but it's going to rub some people the wrong way. And that's just the way it is.
I've actually had friends tell me that with the way NIL is going now, and they weren't really talking about Ryan Day's price. These are Ohio State fans. They're really not talking about the price tag specifically with what Ryan Day said about the cost to keep the roster together, but more so the NIL deals, the cars people are getting, the different deals that these athletes are getting. They said that it's kind of rubbing them the wrong way, and they have a different taste to their mouth about college football versus what it was before. And I can easily see that, because I get sticker shock. I get sticker shock when you say you're leasing a $150,000 vehicle or $200,000 vehicle. I get sticker shock because of that. I get sticker shock when I see Bijan Robinson with a Lamborghini deal. I mean, I'm a human. I get sticker shock because I'm not used to this. If you're 19 years old, you're going to the NBA and you get a Nike deal, well, that's different, because I anticipate Nike or Adidas or any of these shoe companies to go after you because you're going to be a professional athlete. I'm not used to college athletes getting these deals. So I personally get sticker shock. And then when you add in the $13 million price tag, I venture there are a lot of people that are getting sticker shock right now. And there are probably coaches that want to be in a spot like Ryan Day to say that to boosters that say, hey, or business owners, we need this much money to keep our roster together. because Ryan Day knows those businesses will want to assist Ryan Day and the school to make sure the team is kept together. But I venture there are other people on this list, maybe a Jimbo Fisher has no problem with that, but Jim Harbaugh, Kyle Whittingham, or Mario Cristobal, I'm sure they all want to be able to say what Ryan Day said, what you normally might want to keep to yourself, say it out loud. But Ryan Day's in a position, especially with the way Ohio State and athletes have been able to tackle NIL, he can say that out loud because he believes the business owners and those in the area can assist Ryan Day to accomplish this monetary goal to keep the roster together.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that's like you said, I think part of the rubbing the wrong way thing could be, a lot of college football fans are people like us, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
whatever. I don't know how old you are. I'm in my early 40s, and when you see like, hey, I've worked this many years, and there's a 19-year-old draft, but you know what? Those guys are extremely talented.
Yes.
At what they do, and it's the market will dictate it. I do think the market is a little out of whack because I compare the college football market to the NFL. So
Okay.
when you're saying all these things, it's like I was doing some of that. Like if CJ Stroud in theory is worth 2.1 million in NIL money, and Jalen Hurts has been starting in the NFL for 2 years and has a $1.3 million contract as a professional football player, then we can't operate under the whatever the word, the assumption that college football is anything less than what it is at this point, and it's another variation of professional football. So I mean that is why some fans might be rubbed the wrong way, but at the end of the day, they'll be cheering for those teams when Ohio State plays Notre Dame. Both sides aren't going to be talking about NIL. They're going to be talking about the game on the field, and that hasn't changed.
And that's the beauty of it. We're discussing all these offseason topics, the list from Sporting News, NIL, transfer portal. These are probably going to be talking points for quite a long time. The product on the field, I don't believe, is going to change at all. I don't think it really changed last year. It was a really enjoyable season from start to finish, from the beginning, the week 0 games, all the way through the national championship. It was an enjoyable season. I do anticipate another enjoyable season in 2022. And with Ryan Day, I do believe being a coach that's going to be talked about as not only being a hot coach, but someone that can win a national championship and move up this list. I do think the product on the field, I don't think it's going to change as much as some people think it will.
No, I don't. But I mean, again, the product on the field has to, that's an entirely different set of problems is with the lack of parity in college football. I mean, I'm getting ready to do, as you said, we did our coach rankings and we'll do bold projections. And I spoiler alert, the Final Four I'll have will probably be Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson, and we figure out whether or not we want to put Georgia in there as the second SEC team. I mean, that's where the power lies in college football. That's where it will continue to lie, even through NIL. I mean, Ohio State, Alabama, the Texas schools, the Florida schools, USC could be a hit in NIL because of all the California. So that isn't going to change. I don't think there's going to be any more parity. And that goes in hand with the discussion where last summer at this time we were talking about whether or not the college football playoff was going to expand, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon.
Last thing I got for you here. Well, a couple more things. One thing quickly. You have Mario Cristobal at number 11 on this list. He's 62-60 in his career coaching. Has not coached a game at Miami, but I do think if he can get this ball rolling, and with the way that South Florida and just Florida in general produces elite high school talent every single year, from the prep schools to just the regular public schools and private schools, I think Mario Cristobal can be someone that can quickly climb up this list like a Luke Fickle has over the past few years, to be someone that is competing not just with Ryan Day in the top 5 area, but also competing with the other schools, Miami, to be in the playoff and to win a national championship. We've seen Miami do it once, and I do think with the assistance of NIL, that Miami under Mario Cristobal can get back to the mountaintop once again.
Oh, for sure. I mean, they're a school that definitely has been there. He knows what it takes. He knows what NIL. He's done well there. I think the big thing with Mario Cristobal is after his stint at FIU, which didn't go well, he went to Alabama. He learned from that. He learned from Saban. He became an excellent recruiter, and he did well at Oregon. So, yeah, I mean, he's definitely a guy that he'll do well there. How long it will take and how long we jump on the Miami is back, the U is back kind of thing, that always happens. But I do think he'll have them in a position here that as being one of the better Florida schools. But their first goal can't be a national championship. It has to be, hey, let's go out and win an ACC championship. They haven't done that yet, which is stunning, and I don't think even anybody at the ACC probably expected that when they brought them and Florida State in, that Miami would go. I think it's been 16 seasons without an ACC championship.
That's insane. I would have assumed they won one in the early years, but I didn't realize they hadn't won one at all.
Yeah, and I remember when they came into the league, they brought Florida State and Miami. They played them in on Labor Day. It was a big deal, and it was a huge thing that they came to the conference. So between the coaching turnover, the competing with Florida and Florida State in the state, I mean, yeah, I think Mario Cristobal will do a good job. And with Tyler Van Dyke at quarterback and some of the pieces around him, it's going to take time like anything else, but I think they'll be in position to compete at least for the ACC Coastal by the end of this year.
Last thing here, what can Ryan do to move into the top 3 on this list next year?
I mean, if they win the national championship, he'll be right in those guys' class. I mean, right now, it's going to be tough to pass Dabo for a minute. I mean, a lot of Georgia fans think we should have Kirby Smart over Dabo now. But I see the case for that because Georgia may be in a better position to win some national championships than Clemson. But with the recruiting they've done. But if Ryan Day wins one, he would be right in that class. If Lincoln Riley wins one this year, he'd be right there. And I think, it goes year by year. I mean, it's been pretty solid Nick and Dabo for like 5 years when I've done this list. So Ryan Day's right there, and I think he's in position. And if they continue to do what they do and maybe win that first national championship since 2014, he'd be right there.
I'm right there with you, Bill. This is always fun catching up with you. If you could let everyone know where they can follow you on Twitter and then discuss maybe some other things going on that you have not mentioned over at Sporting News.
Yeah, I mean, I'm at BillBender92 at sportingnews.com. We've got a lot of cool stories coming over the next few weeks, like you said, list season, and making sure that we're getting all that content out. So, we'll have bowl projections soon. We'll have our All-American team in July. We'll have top 25 quarterbacks. And before you know it, Media Days will be here. So, yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It's always fun to be on here.
It is fun. And Media Days, you're right there. It seems like this year's going by, summer's going by so fast. I'm getting more entrenched into the recruiting on the show. So that's helping me and help the show pass along. But it seems like this summer, I didn't realize we're already into the middle of June. Before you know it, like you said, it'll be Media Days and then fall camp. And then the season will be here. We'll be talking about ball, actual football once again. Bill Bender, thank you for coming on once again. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me on, Jay.